Hello children, today I'm going to read you a story called Nimba, the magical blue whale. Are you sitting comfortably? Good. Eddie was now 5 and his parents had decided it was time to allow him to take his bath alone. "No, Mummy and Daddy, please, I'm afraid of the water," he cried. "Well, honey," said his mum, "we've already thought about that. Just look at what your father has for you." Eddie's father pulled out a small packet from inside his left side trouser pocket. Eddie's eyes grew wide with excitement. "Oh, thank you, Mummy and Daddy. A birthday gift. Can I open it now?" They stared at each other and nodded. "All right, go ahead, but first close your eyes tightly and make a wish," said Eddie's father. "You see, it's not an ordinary gift. It's a symbol of good luck." Eddie's mum poked him with her elbow. "Shh, John, you'll ruin the surprise." "Sorry, Janet. Well, go on, Eddie. Please open it. We want to see your reaction." Eddie wasted no time and carefully tore the wrapping paper. Inside was a very beautiful model of a blue whale. He was so happy that he began to jump up and down. "Oh, thank you, Mummy and Daddy. I love you both." They both gave him a hug and a kiss, and he promised to take a bath with his new friend, who he named Nimba. "Come on, Nimba, let's go and take our bath. It's going to be great fun." Eddie's parents held hands and smiled as he ran upstairs and into the bathroom. The bathtub was already filled with water, just enough for Eddie and Nimba. Once Eddie undressed, he got in. He placed Nimba in the water and she began to spurt out bubbles from her breathing hole. "Wow, she's just like a real whale." He held it up in his hands, and just then she winked back at him and slipped from his grip and back into the water. "She's real." Nimba swam around the bathtub, back and forth, as Eddie stared in excitement. "Nimba, you are real, aren't you? Talk to me." In reply, the blue whale gently tapped Eddie on the big toe of his right foot with her fin. Suddenly, Eddie began to shrink, smaller and smaller, until he was as small as Nimba. But somehow he did not feel afraid with his friend and decided to climb onto her. Once he was safely on Nimba's back, the blue whale did something very unusual. She began to move towards the plug. "Whoa, Nimba, careful. Watch you don't pull the plug out, or else we'll both be sucked in through the pipe." Nimba seemed sure of herself, and with one flick of her tail, knocked the plug out. "Whoa, oh," yelled Eddie as they were pulled in. The moment they were through, Eddie found himself in the sea. That wasn't all. He felt himself changing, growing up into a young man in his 20s, and all of a sudden, Nimba began to grow into her full size, as had Eddie. He simply could not believe what he saw. She just kept growing and growing and growing. In fact, so much so that all he could see was an organic wall of blue light. For the first time, Eddie felt the immense power and gentleness of Nimba. She must be at least 500 feet in length. Even for a blue whale, that's very rare. Just then, Nimba began to sing. As whales do, it was a beautiful, high-pitched sound. Perhaps she was calling to her companions. Eddie was even smaller than Nimba's eyeball, but for some reason he was not afraid. The water was blue-green as the light from the sunlit sky above reflected on it. He could only watch as Nimba glided along, and he decided to ask her a question. "Nimba, where are you taking me?" In reply, she momentarily stopped to allow him to grab onto her right flipper and then continued forward through the open water. Eddie realized at that moment that he could actually talk and breathe down here, and there was a simple reason for this. He had grown a set of gills on either side of his neck, which his magical companion had given him, so that she could show him her world. Nimba's movements were so gentle and soothing as she glided through the water that Eddie's eyes began to droop and close until he drifted into deep sleep. It was undeniably the best sleep he had ever had. But when he awoke, he felt very cold and saw seals and penguins swimming all around. It was then that he realized that they must have journeyed here to the Arctic Sea. It was almost as if she was searching for others just like herself. Once again she began to sing, and this time there was a reply. Nimba was so overwhelmed with joy that she sprang up out of the water and into the air. At that moment, Eddie had enough time to catch a glimpse of exactly where he was. Yes, this is definitely the Arctic. They were surrounded by snow caps as far as the naked eye could see, and in the far distance he even observed polar bears on the move. It was as if Nimba was telling him, "Look, Eddie, this is where I live. This is my world. Please respect and preserve it." When Eddie realized this, there was a sudden glow of wisdom on his face. He suddenly knew everything. It was almost biblical, just like all the great prophets before him. he too had been enlightened. Nimba then dived back into the sea and finally found what she had been searching for. Her search had ended, and to Eddie's surprise, another blue whale, accompanied by her calf, had appeared. All three whales began to sing in coordination, and after they swam alongside one another. This must have been Nimba's family, reunited in a beautiful act of love, never witnessed by any human on earth. Eddie, who was still holding on to Nimba's fin, decided that it was now time to let her go. His eyes momentarily filled with tears. But these were not tears of pain. They were tears of joy. He thanked the Lord for allowing him to witness such a rare spectacle. After all, the blue whale was the largest life form on our planet, and it was very much alive and well. As this was the future, it just occurred to Eddie that he may well have contributed to their safety. Maybe, just maybe, Nimba had magically transported him into his own future, perhaps to say, "Thank you for doing what you did for all of us." Eddie also realized that this must have been his own destiny. The reason that God had sent him down to the earth to save not only Nimba, but all the remaining whales, all the remaining blue whales. Once this spark of reality entered his consciousness, he suddenly felt a gentle tap from Nimba's tail, just like before, and this was followed by a blinding flash of light. All at once, he was that same 5-year-old boy in his bathtub. But this time there was no water and no Nimba. There then followed the sound of rushing footsteps, and the bathroom door burst open abruptly. It was Eddie's mother. She saw him with the wise look of a learned man across his face, and then asked in a gentle and soothing voice, "Eddie, are you all right? Have you finished your bath? Where's Nimba?" Eddie looked straight into his mother's eyes and gave an innocent smile and replied softly, "Oh, she's perfectly fine. She's just gone for a swim." After which, he placed the plug back tightly into its hole. And that was the story of Nimba, the magical blue whale. I do sincerely hope you enjoyed my story, children, and I look forward to reading you the next story in my next video. Until then, have a nice day. Thank you.